Hey guys, welcome back to the Out Jeeping YouTube channel. My name's Austin, and in today's video we're going to be improving the ride quality on my 99 Jeep Cherokee. If you guys recall from a couple of years ago, I installed a rough country 3-inch suspension lift kit on this, and today we're going to be improving the ride quality just a little bit more. And by doing that, we're going to be replacing the shock absorbers with some new rough country V2 monotube shocks. I'm pretty excited to get these installed, so let's get started. So if you guys recall from my previous videos on installing a 3-inch lift kit on this Jeep Cherokee XJ, I installed some N3 shock absorbers that were with that lift kit. And the N3 shocks are a little bit of an upgrade over the existing N2 shocks. I've actually personally had bad experience with the N2 shocks, and with the N3 shocks, they are the new replacements that are standard in most of these lift kits. Now, I've pretty much daily drive this Jeep for the last 2 years, put on 20,000 miles, and it's almost been 2 years. And overall, the ride quality really hasn't changed from when I first put on the lift kit. Overall, I think the shock absorbers are still doing their job for what they were built for. However, I do feel like the ride quality could be a little bit better. That meaning that the N3 shocks that are on it right now, I feel like are a little bit stiffer, and I want something that might be a little bit more smoother ride. So when I installed the lift kit on this, Rough Country also sent me these V2 shocks and wanted me to compare the two against each other. So I've been dying to put these on for the last couple of years, but had to hold them out. I put 20,000 miles on the Jeep, daily driven it. So they do have some wear and tear on them. I, however, did not have the chance to off-road this Jeep just because of my busy schedule. However, they still received a lot of cycles on them, and so they do have a lot of time on them. So taking a look at these V2 shocks right here, right off the bat we can tell these have a nice brushed aluminum body, and that's a big thing for me. For living in the Rust Belt, we got a lot of salt on the road, so a lot of that undercarriage parts likes to rust out fairly quickly compared to down south. These should definitely last a lot longer than any steel shock in my opinion. Not only are these shock tubes aluminum, but the ends over here are machined aluminum as well, which is pretty nice. So it looks a little bit fatter, and I think they do have a bigger bushing on the end here. It really does look like some nice high quality aluminum machined parts on this. So pretty excited to get these installed. We got our two rear ones right here. We got our two front ones, as you can see with the studs right here. We got our hardware to go up front. They gave us some extra stickers, and I do have some extra 5/8 hardware over here, just some grade 8 5/8 hardware about 1 inch long with some washers and a nut, so we'll need that probably to replace the existing hardware on my Jeep since they do rust out within a few years. Now these shocks did come with some installation instructions, but they're pretty universal for the type of shock that it goes on, since these could probably fit a variety of vehicles, but overall same procedure across the board. Pretty much. But just to go over some of the features that these shocks include, obviously they are monotube design, nitrogen charge, which is basically what the N3s were as well. There is a separate nitrogen and oil chamber inside each of these shocks, but they claim with the aluminum design it's easier for fast heat dissipation, so if you're really abusing your shocks, they're going to obviously heat up with all that fluid inside of there, so having that aluminum on there kind of acts as a heat sink and dissipates some of that heat. It has an internal floating piston, 46mm high flow piston, and then the aluminum brushed body, which is T6061 brushed aluminum. And then they say, yeah, incredible ride quality and give it a little bit more performance to your shocks. So I'm pretty excited to see what these are all about. So I'm going to get started on installing these. I'm going to start over on the front. Not going to go too into detail because you guys have seen me replace shocks before, but I'll bring you guys along and show you what these guys look like all installed underneath the Jeep. So let's get over to the Jeep. Alright, so I got the front tire out of the way. Not a necessary thing you need to do. If you really wanted to, you can replace your shocks by just crawling underneath it. Don't have to lift it up or anything like that, but obviously for you guys, I removed that tire, and now we can clearly see our shock in here. And overall, it doesn't look too bad. Not a whole lot of rust on it. That's because I like to wash my vehicles at least once a week, definitely in the winter time. just to keep all that road salt off of there. So this shock body actually looks pretty good. We'll pull it off and see if there is any compression stuff left in this. I believe these are still working definitely fine, but we are going in for that upgrade. So I'm just going to undo that hardware down below. That's just going to be a 1/2 inch. This is why that anti-seize comes in handy, because everything comes off nicely like that. Alright, got that hardware out. Now we got to get the nut that's on the inside of the engine bay, and then the shock should be free. Alright, then we just got a 9/16 nut holding this on. I don't have an SAE size ratchet wrench, which would work perfect right here, but this will work as well. And I put a little bit of anti-seize on this because if that freezes up, it's going to spin the whole shock tube with it, and then you're going to have to get creative on how you're going to hold that in place, but this is coming off nicely. Alright, bushing still looks pretty good, just a little bit of minor cracking around the ends on there. Now I should be able to lift up and scooch this out of here. Alright, so for a little side-by-side comparison, we got our old shock that we just pulled out and a new V2 right over here. As you can see right off the bat, the shock is pretty much flipped, where we got the main shock body now on the top compared to the bottom over here, which they say in the instructions for the V2 is that you can install it in whatever orientation you want, but we're stuck with installing it this way just because of the way the bar pin is over here, and we just got a rod going up there. But if you had the same mounts on either end of the shock, you can mount it in whatever orientation you so wish to. But after 2 years or so, this shock doesn't look too bad from the outside. Just a little bit dirty and stuff. A little bit of rust starting down here, and they usually like to start around where it's welded on the bottom. So just a little bit of surface rust down there, and the bar pin down here is full of rust as well. So I'm going to take this over to the ground. We'll just do a little bit of comparison on the compression. So I'm just going to put my body weight on each of these shocks, see how fast they collapse, and then we'll see how long it takes for them to extend out. Alright, so I'm pretty much just going to put my body weight on this and see how fast it retracts. That was pretty fast for these N3 shocks. That didn't take long at all. And with it retracting like that, that's the nitrogen part of the shock. So obviously if the nitrogen isn't charged anymore, you really won't have that extending out anymore. I'll just do it one more time. Yeah, that's pretty fast. Alright, so we'll move over to these V2s. See how fast we can retract these. Ooh, which it's taking quite a bit. I can't even push that in all the way. There we go. A little bit slower on retracting, but that's just all the valving that's in these shock tubes. It's a lot more tighter since this is brand new compared to the other one that had 20,000 miles. I am rather curious though what those perform like brand new. I should have done a side-by-side with them brand new. But yeah, overall that's a little bit different than what I was expecting. Definitely a lot tighter on this one compared to this. Going all the way down. Alright, so let's get back to the Jeep and get this new guy installed. Alright, so before we install this, we got our new hardware right here, and it's actually a little bit different than any other shock I've installed before that has this stud on here. Instead of 2 of these big washers, we actually got 4 of them. So we got 2 big ones and then 2 smaller ones. So first we're going to start off with this big one that goes down there, and then we're going to take one of our bushings, they're both the same, install that onto there, and then take a little bushing washer right here, and it has a little bit of a ridge on there, and that little ridge is going to be faced towards where it's going to mount to the vehicle. So this is the underside, so I'm going to have this guy facing up, and then this is pretty much ready to install on this side. And then once we get to the engine bay side, we're going to install it basically just the opposite. Have this little one here, our bushing right there, and then our bigger washer on top, and then with a nut. So I'm going to fit this in place. It's nice that these have these ties on there, so it keeps it a little bit smaller, which actually it's going to have to compress a little bit more since I don't have the vehicle at full droop. so never mind on that. I'm going to have to compress this down and stick it in the hole. And since I'm going to have to compress this anyway, I'm just going to get this rope that they use to keep these a little bit smaller for shipping and cut these out of the way right away. And it's nice that these retract a little bit slower, so it gives you a little bit more time to get this in place. So now I'm going to compress this down. There we go. Let's give it a little bit of wiggle. That's a tight fit. Actually, a little technique I was using off camera, if you get it stuck up here and you really can't push it down anymore, I mean, I had my full body weight as much as I could to get it pretty much at that point. You can take a pickle fork and pry under here and just kind of push it into place, and then the last bit of the way I just took a piece of wood and just hammered on that stud, making sure not to damage or anything like that, but I think that's pretty much good there. Now I'm going to line up our holes, make sure everything's looking good down here. A little bit of NACs on this. Got some new hardware. The old ones are not bad, but I got new stuff anyway, so might as well put some new stuff in there. And I'm just going to snug this up then. Alright, now we just got the top end. Alright, so we got our smaller washer with that little center indention. We're going to have that facing down. Our bushing, big washer, and then our lock nut, but I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on there first. And then we can put our lock nut on here, and this is going to be 17 millimeter, which I got a ratchet wrench for that. I actually got an angled one that were perfect for this. As you can see, with that lock nut, it's actually twisting the whole shock body, so you can get a little hex on here on top and hold it in place, or you can just stick your hand underneath and hold it in place that way. We're going to tighten this up until that bushing just starts to squeeze out, nothing too much. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and get the other front installed, and I'll meet you guys at the rear, and we'll get those shocks knocked out as well. Alright, moving on to the rear, and these shocks are looking pretty much the same as the front. Sticker's a little bit faded right there. But as you can recall, when I installed these, I had these upper bolts snap on me. I think actually one of them is still good in there. The other one snapped off. I had to punch that out and had a bolt come through the top side. If that happens, they do make bar pin eliminator kits. Rough Country actually offers it. I have that on hand in case the other one snaps off, and I can just stick that in there. But it's just a little bit extra work. If you have a bolt coming through the top side, you just have to feed a wrench in through the access hole in this little piece right here. So I'm going to crack these free, and hopefully they come off since I put some anti-seize on these bolts. These are just 5/16 bolts again, so the head of it is going to be a 1/2 inch. There we go. Anti-seize saves the day again. I always like to do these top ones before I get the bottom one on the axle. That way when you're trying to get these out, you don't have the weight of the shock pulling it down. Now we'll feed in our wrench. And this is where it's just going off a feel. Hopefully it grabs onto that nut head. Now I'm just going to fish a magnet stick right behind here to attach onto that bolt, so I can take the old one off so I can put a new one in. And there we go, that one is out. Then on this bottom side we just have an 18mm. Be careful not to snap this guy off. If it's giving you any trouble, just take your time, maybe heat up the nut, because if this snaps off you're going to have to cut off the whole stud, and there are ways of replacing it, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. Oof, that is not what you want to see. That bushing is a little bit pushed out right there. Just get a pry bar in here. There we go. Alright, so now it's time to put in the new shocks in the rear here. As you can see, everything looks nice and painted. I went and cleaned up all the rust here off camera, did a whole bunch of other work, and now the last step is pretty much to put these shocks in. I also ran a 5/16 tap through these holes over here because these ones actually didn't snap off. So by running the tap through, it's going to make putting this new hardware in a lot easier. I got some new 15/16 hardware right here, about 1 inch long, put some anti-seize on there, and now this is ready to go in place. And the key to doing these rears is just to bolt up the top and leave the tether in place. And then we can tighten these up first, and then once we're ready to install the bottom, we'll cut that tether and slide it into place. So I'm just going to snug these guys up. That should be good. Now we'll do the bottom. So for this bottom stud down here, I'm just going to put a little bit of silicone grease on the part where our rubber bushing is going to be on, so that way we don't get any weird wear on there and no squeaks. Now I'm going to cut our string and quickly push this into place before it completely gets past it. There we go. Cut the rest of this off. I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on these threads right here. Washer and nut, and then we can tighten this down. Right there where it bottoms out, that's pretty much good. That's pretty much it for installing these. Now I'm going to go and do the other side quick. Alright, this is the side that's a little bit weird with that one broken bolt, so I have to come up through the top. Alright, that's going to be a wrap for today's short video. Overall, very simple process on replacing shocks. You guys have seen me done it a bunch of times before. But however, on these new V2 shocks, I will say there's a significant upgrade compared to the old N3s that were recently on here. I drove this to work about 3 days now, and I can definitely feel a difference, you know, going through all the bumps and everything, because since there's a lot of potholes here, especially in the middle of winter, this thing is definitely firmed up the ride and almost makes it feel like a brand new car. So I'd say these shocks are probably up there with Bill Stein and other performance shocks as well. These really do ride great compared to the other ones. Time will tell to see how long these shocks last, or if I have any issues, I'll definitely let you guys know, or you guys might just see another video of me replacing these shocks again. but hopefully I get a lot of use out of these shocks for many years to come. As always, I'll post a link in the description so you guys can find these shocks for yourself. And if you guys want to check out the Out Jeeping Etsy store, I got some new decals back in stock as well as some new designs. If you guys want to help support the channel, I'll leave a link in the description below so you guys can find that as well. So hopefully you guys liked this video and found it helpful. If you guys have any questions or comments, make sure to post them below and I'll be happy to answer. Until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video.